to brief you on China's progress in combating climate change and also answer some of your questions. Now the floor is yours, Mr. Li. Ladies and gentlemen, friends from the media, good morning. I'm very glad to take this opportunity to exchange views with you, and also would like to thank all the friends from the media for your long-term support and concern. And based on the planned arrangement, first of all, I'll give you a brief introduction about China's progress in combating climate change. The State Council, CPC Central Committee and State Council have attached great importance in the combating climate change, and also we made China's initiative in cutting the emission of carbon dioxide, including the timeline of carbon peaking and carbon neutrality. Last year, it was an extraordinary year. In September 22nd, last year at the United Nations General Assembly meeting, General Secretary Xi mentioned that China's mission that China will strive to peak carbon dioxide emission before 2030 and achieve carbon neutrality before 2060. And in the later meetings, General Secretary Xi also mentioned about the additional China's contribution, and also mentioned about the installed capacity of solar power. This is also another new high for China. In the fifth plenary session of the 19th National Congress, and this year's the two sessions, as well as the other key meetings, all mentioned about the actual arrangement regarding how we can achieve the carbon peaking and the carbon neutrality. And also on the April 22nd this year, when General Secretary Xi attended the meeting about the Leader Summit on climate, he mentioned about the six commitment made by China, and also would like to work with the global community to combating climate change in order to create a harmony and also create a humanity for man and nature. So we also actually have launched several of the policies and initiatives, including carbon trading and the carbon footprint. All these lay a solid foundation for us in making further progress in combating climate change and also make our voice larger and louder on the global landscape. As the largest developing country, we also need to face the issues such as the pollution and also the poverty alleviation. And so we can see that we still have a prominent issues in imbalancing and inadequate issues. So this is also another big task for us to reach a carbon peak, and we used the shortest time to reach the goal of a carbon peaking and the carbon neutrality. You could imagine how difficult it could achieve, but this is actually so close to the development of China, and also important to building a community of the destination for mankind. This is something we must do, and we should do it well as well. So we should deliver our promise and also embed this goal into our 14th five-year plan. Since last year, Ministry of Ecology and Environment earnestly implement the decision made by President Xi, and also we had the policies, and also first learned well about the localities and the different industries in order to create a synergy to achieve our goal. And we also have the goal for the carbon dioxide emission. Right now delivered initial progress. And in the 14th five-year plan period, we will also further carry out all these policies and measures in order to implement into the letters about the carbon dioxide cut, and also will introduce and also establish the legal framework regarding the carbon peaking and the carbon neutrality. We will also work with relevant departments in order to reach the goal of the peaking carbon dioxide emission before 2030. And we also would like to see a sustainable and healthy development of the green development, and also should involve the whole public involved. And globally, we will continue to make our contribution in a proactive way in order to make sure that all the policies and initiatives can be implemented in an effective and practical way. And we will also do everything we can to build a global community for man and nature living in harmony, and also work with the other countries to reach our goal of building a green, low-carbon, and beautiful world. And this is my brief introduction. Now the floor is open. Thank you, Mr. Li. So please identify your media affiliation before raising questions. Thank you. It's China Daily. I have 2 questions. First question regarding the carbon emission peaking action plan before 2030. So what's the progress right now? Would you also consider about control the total emission of carbon dioxide? So what's your design in this regard to reach this goal? And we also actually have a lot of proposals made by the members and the delegates at the 2 sessions. So would you please introduce more about how we can reach the goal? So to your first question, in my brief introduction, I touched upon about the action plan about the carbon dioxide peaking. Is a very important action plan we should follow in order to reach the goal. Right now, this is one of the key strategy made by the CPC Central Committee and State Council, and we did some the technical work. We actually first made a draft plan and consult the experts from the key industries, and also learn from the academians from the academic circles, and also talk to the localities, and also to learn and study the momentum of carbon dioxide. And in order to further support the localities to meet the goal of carbon dioxide peaking, and we also plan to issue the guidelines. By the end of last year, we had another specific meeting to train people involved from different localities to learn more about what exactly we mentioned about the carbon dioxide peaking, and what's the policies in place, what kind of a supportive measures we have, and also what kind of requirements, and also the definition of the carbon dioxide peaking. So they could learn more about that and also help them to meet the goal in the 14th five-year plan, and also to work on the projects related in these areas in 15th five-year plan period. We talk about the steel, concrete, the chemical materials, coal, and also the eco-chemical industries are all involved. And we also work with the industrial committees based on the industrial development as well as the national development. In reaching the goals, they also make the goal for different industries and the action plans to deliver this goal. Actually, we talked to the different industries, and for example, for the transportation sector and also the construction sectors, how we can help them to also reach the goal. On top of that, we also had reports available as well as research results. The preliminary studies, as I mentioned, about different industries and companies, because they covered 80% of the carbon emission. The localities also actively pursue the goal for each different place. They need to think about their own conditions, think about the future of the industries, think about their future development as well as the national development requirements in order to make their own goals, in order to reach the national strategy, and what kind of action plan can help them to reach this goal. And going forward, we'll also work with relevant departments and ministries to compile a master plan of the carbon dioxide peaking and also give additional support to the localities and the different industries. As you also mentioned about the control of the carbon dioxide emission, or the total emission. Actually, from 12th five-year plan, we already started control the carbon-centered emission, and so far we have seen a good progress. And the whole progress actually fit in the development of our country's development. Actually, a lot of countries mention about the carbon emission intensity. Actually, we look at the intensity regarding greenhouse emission or the carbon dioxide emission. We could see China still on the going up slope of the curve. So we first mentioned about our goal that fits in our condition, and also to control the intensity of the work for different localities. So talk about the carbon dioxide peaking. I believe controlled intensity actually should be a key way for us to measure our progress, and so far we could see that worked. Going forward, we should also consider about that on top of controlling the intensity, and we could better control the total emission. Actually, that already reflected in our 14th five-year plan as well as 13th five-year plan. We had specific documents mentioning that we will focus on the control of the emission intensity while keeping a close eye on the total emission of carbon dioxide. And also right now we are working on the plannings. Actually, we collected data from different localities as well as industries, different sectors, and also studied the development of the industries and the future emission of different industries. Taking all these into consideration, that will help us to make a reasonable plan on controlling the intensity as well as the total emission of carbon dioxide. If we can further control the total emission, I believe that is conducive for us to control the budget of the carbon dioxide emission. And we also right now is building the carbon trading system. So we would like to include the different industries into the scope. I believe if we talk about control the total emission, that will also have a cap number to the different industry. Of course, we should also take into the consideration of the development need of different industries. But we talk about that the carbon sink trading will also help us to control the total emission, and also talk about the legislative perspective of our carbon emission. I believe this is very important. So we should bring our goal under the legal framework. I believe this is of paramount significance. Looking at international practice, more than a dozen countries have their legislation related to climate change. In our country, right now, I believe work is undergoing. August 2009, the MPC Standing Committee actually issued a resolution on combating climate change and also mentioned about legislation work in this regard. And we also intensify our efforts in this regard. But that should also solve some difficulties. First, we need to think about timing, when is the best time for legislation. And the second, we talk about legislation or different laws, what that should be targeting for. So we need to think about which perspective of climate change should be first have a specific or matching legislation. And we also need to think about that the laws or legislation should not contradict to the different laws and regulations. Another we need to think about is not just one specific law for climate change. We think about carbon trading, and legislation should play a part of the rules and regulations introduced by the State Council. We talk about the agricultural sector, the forestry sectors, land resources sectors. Actually, if you talk about legislation, all these should take into consideration because these are all related to climate change. So there are a lot of things, different sectors, different factors, different aspects need to be included. And for new laws, we also need to think about how that fits in the changing environment of climate change. And we talk about, we also very important to have a specific legislation concerning climate change. The CPC Central Committee and State Council mentioned about the goal for carbon peaking and carbon neutrality. It's a long-run work. And we believe right now is a good timing for us to introduce the certain laws and regulations, and we also had some studies in place. So going forward, we will also work with relevant departments to come up with a specific law regarding carbon or regarding climate change. By doing so, we believe that it can play an active role in helping us reaching the goal 3060, and also internationally that also can show China is a responsible country and also show our resolve by introducing laws and regulations to achieving that 3060 goals. Thank you. Xinhua News Agency. My question is, would you please help us to summarize what kind of the progress China made and have achieved in the climate change combating, and what's the following measures we have, especially in the 14th five-year plan period? Thank you. Thank you for your question. The State Council and the CPC Central Committee always put climate change combating in the top of our agenda, and we also would like to use that the requirement of the climate change combating as a way to regulate the development of economy and society. So we talk about we would like to build the carbon market, let the market play its role in this regard. And we also have the carbon sink trading, and we have a series of the initiatives in place, which all right now have seen a progress. And we're also including all these in the 14th five-year plan. Since the 12th five-year plan, we actually make one of the index into the master plan, and also linking that with the economic and social development. So that's the number we mentioned about cutting a certain number of the carbon emission. In the 12th five-year plan period, the intensity of carbon emission dropped by 19.3% and 18.8%. That's the number for 13th five-year plan. So we talk about we dropped the carbon dioxide emission by 40 to 45% to compare to the 2005 level. And talk about the progress right now. Right now, we last year already reached a number of 48% higher than the goal we set in place. So we actually hit this target ahead of the agenda. During the whole progress, we also see that by year 2020, the primary energy is 15.9%. Mentioned about coal. Actually, for the coal is always under our close attention. If you compare the number of the proportion of carbon, so the proportion of carbon taking up of the total energy resources, the number reached 56.5% in 2020 from 72.4% in 2005. So we slow down the momentum of the up curve of carbon emission. We talk about we not reached the peak number yet, but right now we already slow it down. And also we right now also accelerate the building of carbon plants. So during the whole process, we also worked with the international community, and China had the negotiation of the Paris Agreement, and also signed the agreement, and also make our contribution, and that's his historical contribution to the Paris Agreement coming into effect. Going forward, combating climate change should be the part of the master plan of carbon dioxide emission peaking and carbon neutrality. We talk about our work should closely link to the economic and social development. I believe for the fundamental way is that we should upgrade the industrial sector as well as improving the energy structure. So in the 14th five-year plan, one of the thing we need to do is to implement the plan of a carbon peaking and support the leading companies to reach the goal. And we also have the index for carbon emission intensity. I believe that this required everyone to pitch in to reach this goal by 2030. we talk about the way of life, way of production should also in a green manner. I believe that the help to raise the awareness of the whole society. And also, as another reporter mentioned about legislation, we also talk about the institution of policies and measures. Oh, very important. At the same time, also need to mention that the impact to our country brought by climate change and how we can mitigate this negative impact brought by climate change. And we also should adapt to the changes. We should have that capability to adapt to all these changes. We talk about the goal right now we are setting against the climate change, all based or centered by carbon. And we will also work actively in the global climate change governance. 14th five-year plan is a very important opportunity period for us. So we will earnestly implement the decisions and arrangement made by CPC Central Committee and State Council. So first, we need to come up with the specific plan, which should be aligned with the plan regarding the environmental conservation and also the plan of the other departments. So that should help us to reach the goal of 18% of the carbon emission intensity, and also in line with the goals of the different localities and different sectors, and also need to have the evaluation method in place. And regarding carbon peaking, we'll also collaborate with the different ministries to first come up with the master plan, and we should create that synergy among different departments. So we should play our role and responsibility to give the guidance to the localities and the key industries sectors to help them to lay out their action plans and the timelines to deliver the goals. So from our ministry, the carbon peaking should also be one of our work in law enforcement and our supervision work. And regarding the carbon trading, right now we should like to take the leading industries first involved and make sure that also can be traded online. And later on, we should embrace more industries involved and make sure that the carbon market or the carbon sink market can play its active role and channel more funds to support our endeavor in combating climate change, controlling the total emission, as well as intensity, and also should have a good top ceiling design and the system, as well as institution. And for the key strategies, we should also plan ahead of the curve. We talk about the technology for certain industries, negative emission, the removal of carbon, as well as the carbon sequestration. So we stored the carbon, and we also have the publicity day. So that is also very important. The window to educate the public in order to foster environment featuring green. We talk about a lot of work, a lot of policies are still the public ones. Whether it can be effectively carried out, it should depend on the awareness of the whole society. If we can effectively increase the social awareness of the carbon peaking and the carbon neutrality, we believe that's a guarantee for our work. Last week, President Xi at the Leader Summit on Climate Change mentioned about that we will gradually lower the carbon consumption. So how your ministry work with the NDRC and MOFCON. So this is a quite wide topic that rely on the collaboration with the different ministries in order to create synergies in terms of policy. On behalf of the Ministry of Ecology and Environment, I believe there are these things we could play our role. As I mentioned about the carbon intensity, so that's the obligatory target. So that helps us to control the emission of greenhouse gases. So we also need to upgrade and improve the structure of energy resources. I believe that's the way to hit the goal, and also about the legislation work that is also conducive for us to reach the goal of carbon peaking and carbon neutrality on a law base. And also, as you mentioned about the NDRC, about the Bureau of Energy Resources, I believe that we will do more in the 14th Five-Year Plan, and also for each ministry, they also need to have their own plans under the umbrella of the overarching goal. For the key industries, we also need to boost the development of the technologies, upgrading of their industrial structures in order to reach the national goals. And also, as I mentioned earlier, we have a quite strong law enforcement team. So we will also conduct the inspections and the supervision work. That is also part of our ministry's job. I believe that we will also work with other departments. So talk about NDRC, talk about the Administration of Energy Resources. They will also introduce the policies from their territory to help us reach the goal. And also we talk about the MIT, about the Ministry of Finance, MOFCOM. They will also, from their angle, to introduce policies, measures, and action plans to create the synergies among all the ministries in order to reach the national goals.
谢谢主持人，我是总台中国国际电视台 CGTN 记者，想请问李司长，日前
With CGTN, my question to Mr. Li, and not long ago, the President Xi had a conference with the European leaders and talk about that. In that meeting, China has decided to accept Kigali Amendment to the Montreal Protocol. So what's the details? Would you please introduce more in this regard? Thank you for your question. talk about our own initiative goals are the goal for the carbon emission. Actually, all focus on carbon, but at the same time, we not lose our attention on the non-carbon dioxide emissions. Including the methane, and we talk about these non-carbon emissions actually even impose a greater threat to greenhouse impact. So right now we talk about we should control the carbon dioxide emission, but at the same time, starting from 14th five-year plan for the non-carbon dioxide emissions should be all included in our agenda in combating climate change. As General President Xi said, we accept the Kigali Amendment to the Montreal Protocol, and also going forward, we will tighten our regulations over non-carbon dioxide emissions. So that's talk about we not only focus on the carbide, that should be including everything under the name of non-carbon dioxide emissions. So talk about the cyanide and the carbide. We had DA specific projects to dismantle these kind of products, and we also use different ways. And so far, actually, we already cut emission of the non-carbon dioxide emission by 653,000 tons, that equal to 966 million tons of carbon dioxide. And we also have the goal on the zero usage, the chemical fertilizer, and also ahead of the curve. Actually, we already reached the inactive growth in the fertilizer, and also conducive for us to cut the emission. And talking about the garbage disposal. Right now, it's a nationwide actions in the garbage sorting that also help us to improve our capabilities in order to cut the emission of methane. I believe that's more the role it can play, and we also talk about in the different sectors such as agriculture. We talk about the mesh gases used or the methane gases used in the rural areas. So we have these methane projects. Every year, we cut emission of 60 million tons of methane. And also, we also intensified our efforts in exploring shale gases, but also reached a good progress in cutting the emission of methane. And talk about oil and the gas industries, the companies involved in these sectors also make their contribution to cut emissions. We talk about the gas cycle at the oil field, as well as exploitation work. It's all done in a green and smarter way. for the work regarding a non-carbon dioxide emissions. We also introduce the methodologies involved in this regard that also provide solid foundation or the guidelines for us to implement our work. And going forward, we'll also have the build up our system, including the supervising reports, as well as the list of the non-carbon dioxide emissions, so we could know more about the emission trend of these non-carbon emission, and also have the more accurate understanding and the judgment and the curve of the emission, and we'll also work with the relevant localities to conduct local governance, focusing on the exploitation of the methane, as well as we also introduce the standards for techniques, equipment, methods involved. For oil and gas sectors, we control the emission of methane and also put a close eye on the methane leaking during the whole process from exploitation to transportation. Regarding the garbage classification, as well as the utilization of methane gas, that also help us to count the emission of methane. For carbat and the Sanabat, we will also intensify our work to cut the HFC 23. And we also intensify our efforts in using less chemical fertilizer. And we will also going forward to use less sulfur hexafluoride rate. So that is the main gases we use in the power generation. So we will also use the alternative resources for the power generation. So from all our work, we would like to control the non-carbon emission across the board.
谢谢主持人。CNBC 记者提问。
CNBC.
3个问题。第一个问题是
I have 3 questions.
金融方面的，就是在近期韩国有
The first one regarding
在对国外燃煤
the
发电
financial sector.
融资支持，想请问中国在这方面会有类似的一些计划？然后第二是关于这个。
So the ROK mentioned about the stop providing financing support to
有多少？
the carbon emission industries. So whether China have the similar policy, and what's the demand of the energy resources in China, and whether that will be changed in the long run. And regarding the policy side, we'll shift or focus more to the steel sector or the new energy vehicles. Thank you for your question. Regarding the financing overseas coal-fired power plant, China did provide some support to developing countries in building their coal-fired power plants. We're doing this based on their country's needs. We also notice that a lot of developing countries, they right now even have difficulties to access the power. You ask them to use the replaceable energies, whether it's affordable for them. We should need to think in their shoes. We cannot just simply say stop supporting a coal-fired power plant in developing countries. We talk about combating climate change. That doesn't mean that the people in developing countries, they could not have a certain decent life. So we should think in a collaborative way. And on one hand, we combat climate change. On the other hand, we also need to focus on the social and economic development. So for our work, we first base on the local needs of that country, and also we do everything follow a quite high standards. Look at our efficiency actually quite high, even surpassing the developed countries such as the United States. And during the whole process, maybe some media coverage focus more or over-focused on the financial support or the financial cooperation, but we also actually help the developing countries in tapping the potential of using replaceable energy resources. So if you look at China, actually the alternative energy or the energy structure change is a long-term effort. But right now, the people in the certain developing countries that right now still have a difficulty accessing power. So we should really say based on the facts. I don't know whether you have noticed that in the recent days that the China and the United States actually issued a joint declaration, a joint statement addressing the climate crisis. That inside this statement, we also mentioned that we will support the developing countries and helping them use recyclable energy. So you talk about your first question, actually you talk about we stop doing this. But for ourselves from China, we talk more about how we can better support and help them. So we will bring more support channel, more resources to help developing countries use the recyclable energy and actually look at we help them to build a solar power plant. And also you mentioned about the new energy, the proportion of new energy out of the energy resources. The President Xi mentioned we also increased the goal for the self-contribution. As I mentioned, China's progress in combating climate change, we talk about that non-fossil energy actually took a more proportion of the energy resources, and the proportion of carbon actually dropped sharply. And based on our goal of 30-60 for fossil fuels, especially carbon, we will further tighten our control. As President Xi mentioned, we will strictly control the consumption on carbon. So which means we control the coal, control coal power, which also means that we'll use more the solar power, wind power.
光伏的这个装机，
By 2030, install the capacity goal also mentioned.
扎扎实实的工作来推动我们整个的
Therefore, going forward, based on solid work,
这个
we hope we
更
could
以更快，是吧？这当然也要保证安全的前提下，以更快的
accelerate
转型，这个
the
而且呢
transformation
我们在提
of
高
energy
国家
structure
自主贡献目标的时候，其中有一个指
on
标
the premise of security and safety.
原来我们这个把这个20%到2030年20%，这个提高到了25%，这个指标对吧也提高了，所以也显示了中国在未来发展可再生能源的。
So we actually also improve the number of the
那么在应对气候变化的这个政策当中
renewable resources from 20% to 25%. That also shows China's
要
ambition.
把这个我们
And also by doing so, that's also important for us to improve the industrial structures for the productivity and also the high energy consumption,
产业体系的这个
low productivity industries should be transferred and upgraded. Another is the change of our
那么
the resource structures that should be included in our plan.
电定位在进一步的发生变化。那么以前是这个主力的电源，是吧？
Talk about a coal power plant. Before that, a key place to generate power. Going forward, its role should be changed.
那么现在呢，我们还
Its positioning should be changed more for the maintaining the security of
基本面
national grid.
是吧？这个也包括这个我们要大力发展这个可再
We
生
talk
能源
about
但
that
是
fulfilling the people's
那
basic
可靠性
needs
是吧
and
这个储能的这个技术还没有
further developing
这个进步，
renewable
还需要
energy.
提供一定的这个
That still
但是呢，
needs some time for us to reach that the ambition,
非常的明确。
but we will not develop the
有一些煤电，我
coal
煤电技术
power
我们
plants
发展
in an aggressive manner. This is something clear.
但另一个角度呢，
We talk about China still build the coal power plants, but actually that's not the definition in the traditional manner and operate in the full capacity. That's basically play its role to fulfill people's basic needs and also be secure the operation of a national grid. Is
所以呢，即便我们还有少量的煤电厂的建设，但是它产生的这个
have some of the building of the power plant, but actually the positioning and also the emission actually is all changed
首先
compared to the old days.
还有很多相关的一些这个产业是吧？将来这个也要进一步的运用一些新的技术，比如说钢铁行业是吧？
And for the steel industry and for iron industries, they will also use the new technologies
链条很长，不仅排放多是吧？污染
so they can
温室气体
basically use
另外一个
the
我们现在也要考虑提研究
wasted
将来可能
iron resources.
整个的
So we
将来
use
提
less
到
iron
会
ore.
减少对煤炭的消费，这些技术都在考虑。另外，新能源汽车是我们重点发展。
as the other new technologies that may also help us to remove
中国的新能源汽车
the carbon coke.
发展可以
And if you look at the new energy vehicles, you could describe that actually reach a record high speed.
整个那个发展的势头还是非常的好，是吧？未来这个
So its momentum is very
将是一个这个
nice. So I believe that
发展的这样的势头。
this momentum still can continue. Due to the interest of time, one last question, please.
有声音的分析实现碳达峰，但是
China News Agency.
经济发展速度，请
Some always worried about that may slow down the pace of China's economic growth in order to reach the goal of carbon peaking and the carbon dioxide. How we can strike a balance? I believe this is a really good question because a lot of people are quite keen to know the answer. So to reach the goal of a carbon peaking, carbon neutrality is not only contradictory to reaching the goal of social and economic development. As President Xi mentioned, that it's not other force us to do so. Actually, it's basically first to meet the requirement of our internal development. So we should improve the structure of energy resources, upgrade our industries, improve the energy usage efficiency, and also introduce more technologies and techniques, planting more trees to improve the capability of carbon sink. Actually, all these are the things need to be done in order to meet China's high quality development. So these two goals actually not contradict to each other. So if we look at China's development right now, we already shift our development to a high quality development, which means that it requires to have a new energy to drive the economic and social development. So I believe for the dual circulation, with domestic circulation as a mainstay, domestic and international one reinforcing each other, these actually not go against the goal of carbon peaking, carbon dioxide. But of course, there are some challenges for us to reach the goal, and by that said, we still have the opportunities, and that for us we need to think about the relationship in the short run and also in the mid and long run. So for China right now, China still is one of the largest developing countries, so we still have a contradiction between people's ever-growing needs for a better life and inadequate and balanced development. And also we have other difficulties in our society, so that will impose additional challenges for our work. So we should base our facts based on China's condition as well as based on our actual capability and development phases. We should extract a balance between short-term and long-term, as well as the carbon dioxide emission and the economic and social development. We talk about that should be done by each one after another 5-year plan. And also the phased goal should be reasonable and practical in order for us to reach the goal of carbon peak and carbon neutrality step by step. During our endeavor, to reach the carbon peaking and the carbon neutrality, and also the good way for us to be creative in our policy, in our technology, in the mode of business, in the mode of operation. I believe we should have every reason to believe that we could reach the goal 3060. As I mentioned earlier, actually the carbon peaking and the carbon neutrality could be a way for us to reach high quality development of our economy and society. And I believe that also can cultivate the green and new drivers. I believe from a long one, this is really conducive, and we have a quite a clear goal and direction. We should tighten our control on carbon dioxide emission, but also at the same time, We also consider the phase requirement. So in 14th Five-Year Plan, we focus on the control of a carbon projects, carbon emission, and the 15th Five-Year Plan, we have less carbon projects. I believe that, as President Xi mentioned in the Leaders Summit on Climate, that we have the resolve, we have the passion, and we also have the plan in a phased manner. We control the carbon consumption, but also at the same time, we also need to diffuse the threat to the grid and the industries. And we also can actually give the supportive policies to certain the industries. So controlling the consumption on coal, fossil fuels, which also means that we will also do more to develop renewable energy, because people have the needs for better life. They have that requirement on energy resources. So that basically have the empty room actually right now preserved for renewable energies. So for the financial institutions, for the industries, for practitioners, actually this is really good news for them. I believe this is also a good opportunity for us to see the new drivers to drive the development and also to create more jobs in renewable resources industry. There are a lot of benefits. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Lee, and thank you all the friends from the media. Thank you all.